All right, so detail a few key innovators and innovations of the first wave of the Industrial Revolution that we discussed yesterday. So think about some of the vocab terms that you had with these key innovators, and think of some of these key inventions that really helped bring on this industrial age. Why do you guys stack your phones into one pocket? Where? Everybody does it every period.
Oh.
Yeah, I am blaming you. So just a reminder too, the last day of the second marking period is Monday. So those grades will be in for the second marking period. So look over Sapphire if you're missing anything, or maybe if there's a grade that maybe I missed, just let me know. Lana, what's up? I'm probably just gonna do notes again. So,
Like I'm saying.
This bell ringer is like the last assignment here for second marking period, so then everything else after that. Okay? Pretty sure I did. That's what. I think it was like 7 periods. So.
That one was up there for a while.
Yeah.
I think they're a week before Christmas.
Great. That was a good one. Good one. I was thinking you put something like the two. Yes. Or the bottom. Three. Or an upside down one. I don't. Why are you erasing it? Because. No. Yeah. No smile, no laugh, no breathing. All right, we done? We finished? No? Okay. Not a minute here. No smile, no laugh. Like and subscribe. Help us. We need Bowman to start getting paid on YouTube too. Jeez. Wow. Okay. 928 today. All right, here we go. Here we go. So we talked about a few key innovators and inventions of the first wave. Like I said, it started Great Britain. We talked quite a bit about why Great Britain. And we mentioned about this Victorian age. It was the Queen of Great Britain at the time. So after the Napoleonic Wars, you have definitely that Great Britain solidified as the #1 power in the world. And with all their territorial possessions around the world, like I said, with the sun never setting on the British Empire, they have access to a lot of resources, materials that you can't find anywhere else. So they literally control the marketplace.
We also talk about, obviously, with the land, labor, capital, right? With their capitalist system, they had a means of, expansion through the private sector. So then the government can focus more on, let's say, building up the Navy and having a stronger force when it came to this imperialistic age. So we move forward in this chapter. We will talk about imperialism here and how that is one of the key factors leading up to World War I, and how this expansion is only going to create competition amongst these European countries. But this first wave occurs in Great Britain, again, because, well, they're separated from the rest of mainland Europe. They have protection. They have these natural defenses. And that's going to be one of their key assets, even in the future here, which we're going to talk about with World War I and World War II. All right, so this first wave, who do we talk about? Go ahead, give me one, Wyatt.
James Watt with the steam engine.
All right, good job. James Watt with the steam engine. Good job. So that's going to change the game when it comes to some of these textile companies and businesses. Like I mentioned, a lot of them were focused on flowing water like rivers or streams that would push, let's say, a water mill that would power some of these mechanisms, like the spinning mule. Who came up with this spinning mule? What was that guy? Connor, go ahead.
Samuel Crompton.
Yeah, good job. So Samuel Crompton, which could apply over 1,000 threads all at once to, making different types of textiles. When it comes to clothing, when it comes to uniforms, when it comes to blankets, shirts, you name it. Beforehand, it was more of a domestic system, what they call it. And now we're transitioning to this factory system. Pretty self-explanatory, right? And in that case, right, you have a mass production of goods. And, before this industrial age, it was hard to even get your hands on a regular shirt, clothing. It was tough because there wasn't a high supply of it. All right, so with that, we might as well stay on the idea of clothing here. Right? So I didn't get to talk about him yet in the presentation. I'll focus more on him today as we transition to the second wave. Who created the cotton gin and these interchangeable parts? Go ahead, Aaron.
Eli Whitney.
Eli Whitney, yeah, good job. So this was a way to try to separate the cotton, the fabric that's in need for these textiles, for these clothing that's going to be sewn together and that's going to be weaved together. And, really helping Great Britain produce a lot of capital at the time. And it's really like a grinder. I'll show you maybe a video. I attached a video to the video lesson. You guys can check it out on your own. And it pretty much grinds the seeds right out of the cloth that is desired for this clothing. One negative impact of it, though, is that it's going to do what? It's going to really force the United States, in particular the South, to expand its what? Go ahead. Slavery. Yeah, slavery. So, yeah, Great Britain was really eating up a lot of this resource, and that's how cotton was king for many, many years. And ultimately, leading up to the Civil War, the increase of slavery for these resources, for these finalized products. All right, so interchangeable parts, we talked a little bit about that as well with Eli Whitney. Okay, it's important to note before this, let's say if something went bad on your musket, you had to toss it out. They didn't have the ability to just lock in or change a different part that was broken on the musket. Okay, rather than throwing out the whole good itself, well, all you got to do is just really take out the part that's broken. Let's say the hammer on the musket, you just take that part out, add a new one, and you're good to go, right? And you can have a operating musket. And again, this is going to be applied to many different other items, right? It's not like it's just applied to muskets, but that's just what he focused on at the time. So with cars, for instance, right? Let's say a fuel pump goes wrong. Well, you can just change the fuel pump rather than just buying a whole new car and putting yourself in a lot of debt. All right, and that obviously opens up the realm for more factories, more manufacturing of some of these interchangeable parts, offering more jobs and building capital. All right, what else? What else did we talk about? So he's talked about the steam engine already. So yesterday we talked about means of transportation. Just watched a video at the start of class here. Who created the first steamboat? United States here. What was his name? Aaron, go ahead. Robert Fulton. Yep, good job. And why was that impactful? Why was that impactful? Why was that so demanding of the time? So Chris, go ahead. Yeah, good job, right? So when you're thinking about the Mississippi River, okay, you're looking at many of the cities that are focused along the Mississippi River, focused on the Midwest United States. So you can just travel up it, see, and know a lot of them already, right? So obviously New Orleans at the port, but as you're focusing upstream, you have St. Louis, right? You got Chicago out here at the top. When you think about the steel business, Pittsburgh focused on three rivers. It's important for transportation. And now you just don't have to flow them downstream. Now you have access to go upstream with the power of the steamboat. So yeah, that changes the game when it comes to accessing materials and when it comes to producing goods, raw materials, and for the Midwest, especially the Great Plains region, agricultural growth. All right, what else are we talking about? Another means of transportation. It's another means. So with Great Britain especially, go ahead, Mark. Yeah, trains, right? So who created the first locomotive steam engine? Go ahead. Yeah, George Stephenson, good job. So with George Stephenson, he creates this train, okay, and obviously it's going to change the game for transportation. It doesn't have to be focused on waterways, right? And now it can be expanded across land, it can now be expanded all across Great Britain and even the United States, right? So yeah, that's important when it comes to getting materials and goods from the rural areas to the marketplace. Also, when it comes to with these factories, these industries pumping out finalized goods, getting them to the marketplace. Also, when it comes to trains, we'll talk about it when we get to the Franco-Prussian War. It's very good when it comes to mobilizing an army, quick, fast, and efficient. You can get troops from one location to the other, quick and effective. All right, is there anybody else that missed? I think that's all that we talked about with the first wave. Okay. Here are your terms for today. All right, here you go. Samuel Morse. Okay, hey, I actually attached a link to a reading today. It's actually today in history, this day in history, the first form of Morse code sent out, January 6th, but this was way back in the 1830s. So in any case, I thought that was something interesting. It goes to show we just landed right on that date. It's like I tried it. No, I didn't. It just happened. But anyway, there you go, Samuel Morse. All right, so as you can see, a lot of these innovators, okay, with their inventions moving forward here, it's going to be applied to this second wave of the Industrial Revolution. I knew you were going to say that. Yes. You guys need another minute? Okay, no problem. While you're working on the vocab, I'll come around and check your bell rate percent. You should have 4. Oh, the beginning of the year. All right, Samuel Morse, what do we have? We got Samuel Morse. Someone, Chris, thank you. All right, Morse code, good job. So when it comes to communication, that's going to be big, especially with this industrial revolution, second wave here, right? And there's going to be lines that are going to be spread all throughout the world. A lot of them connecting Great Britain to their overseas territories. So I know it sounds crazy, but there were literally cables that were stretching across the Atlantic Ocean to the United States and to Great Britain, and all the way down to Africa, to Asia. And it seemed, like I said, ridiculous, but that was a means of communication at the time. And with these telecommunication cables, there's a way to send code back and forth to communicate. So obviously that's important when it comes to resources, materials, when it comes to maybe managing a military, right? And setting up techniques and strategies on the battlefield, maybe overseas. So with that, okay, Morse code and with the telegraph, okay, this communication could occur. All right, Alexander Graham Bell. Here. So again, 2 American guys. Go ahead.
The Scottish-born inventor, scientist, engineer, is credited with patenting the first practical telephone.
Yeah, good job. Right, the first telephone. Right, so we'll talk about him a little bit more in detail today when we get to communication of the second wave. But the telephone's a little bit different than what we have today with the iPhone. Right, it looked a little bit more of a boxier look. And you actually have a portion where you speak into, and there's actually 2 parts where you actually put up your ears to listen to them. And the way it looked, kind of looked a little crazy, a little whack for the time. But with Alexander Graham Bell in the mid to late 1800s, you can now talk over the phone. So when it comes to industry, when it comes to production, it's important to have this communication. It's important to have the means of discussing information, especially when it comes to orders, when it comes to transportation. And obviously, it's going to be applied to the battlefield. Chris.
The Alexander Graham Bell also has.
Yeah, good one, good one. All right, here we go. How do you pronounce it, Wyatt?
Oh, Guglielmo Macaroni.
Guglielmo Marconi. Yes. Okay, there you go. Guglielmo Macaroni. Yeah. So what do we got here for him? Go ahead.
He was Italian, like engineer, and he made the radio.
Yeah, good job. So the radio, right? Again, a lot different than what you can see in your car or even what you can even access on your phone nowadays. But with the radio, okay, this is utilizing radio waves to communicate, right? And with that, it's going to be applied again to transportation when it comes to the factories, what type of output or supply and resources that could be sent back and forth and be communicated over these radio waves. So yeah, it's not like you have to have these lines like the telegraph And it's not like you need lines again for the telephone. So with these radio waves, it's a way to communicate without kind of the look of these towers that are connecting these wires all across the country. But anyway, with the radio, it is going to be applied to warfare. And when we get closer to World War II, a lot of these newer and improved tanks, especially for the Germans when it comes to blitzkrieg attacks, they have these radios installed within their tanks. Fast, efficient means of attack. So we'll mention that here soon enough. Henry Bessemer. Henry Bessemer. All right, Chris, go ahead. Thanks.
Made advancements in the steel industry.
Yeah, good job. The steel industry. Good, good, good. So this is a way to try to create steel. He was the first person to do it, to mass produce steel. And the way he did it was like there was a big melting pot, and they threw iron ore within it, and they molded it down, melted it down, to try to really purify the imperfections of the iron. And as there was a shot of air that was spread through it, it would cool it down, making it a lot harder, like making it a lot more stable and a stronger metal. So this steel process, this steel making, is only going to propel industrialization due to creating skyscrapers, right? To create different types of buildings that you see pretty well known in these larger urban areas. Obviously with steel, right, it's going to be applied to the railroad. So when it comes to this transportation, it comes to moving different types of resources back and forth. And when it comes to warfare, right, a strong, durable metal. When you get to American history too, with Mr. Shutt now, right, he'll talk quite a bit about this Bessemer process and how it'll be applied with Andrew Carnegie in the United States in modern day Pittsburgh, Steel City, right? Yeah, so with Pittsburgh, okay, with Carnegie, that's a big name out there. He donated a lot of his money, pretty much all of his money, to the city. And that's why still today, Pittsburgh's a very clean city. And there's a lot of different types of innovations when it comes to the means of transportation, when it comes to education. And he didn't even leave a cent for his kids. Can you imagine that? This larger-than-life tycoon, a billionaire of the time in the early 1900s. And his kids are like, oh, yeah, we're going to inherit all this wealth. Nope, he donated it all back to the city. Pretty cool.
Praise God.
He's like, I made my own way of life, and you guys can do it too. No free, easy pass. Nikola Tesla. What we got for Tesla? So with Tesla and Edison, there's going to be a competition between the two, somewhat of a heated rivalry. And when we get back more on Monday, I'll play a video that kind of explains it. And the narrator of it, pretty cool, I found it was awesome, is the voice of the animated Batman series, which is really sweet. So that even made it better for me.
Animated.
All right, Tesla. What do we have for Tesla? What is he made for? It's a down name here. Come on, man. Kevin Conroy. Come on. What do we got for Tesla? Tesla. Someone, please. Connor, thank you.
Serbian American electrical engineer, mechanical engineer, and is best known for his contributions to modern alternate current.
Yeah, alternating current, right? So with this AC power, alternating current, this is a way to power many different, like let's say cities, obviously, when it comes to larger urban areas. It is alternating power will move back and forth down the wires, down the lines, which will allow for a more stable connection. And for these generators, these AC generators, it was a means of producing this energy and allowing it to be sprung throughout these larger areas without, let's say, breaking down or without running out of power or running out of energy. This alternating current was a lot better, more efficient than what we have with DC power with Thomas Edison. Direct current just goes in one line, and once it's out, once it's faded away, once that energy is used by, let's say, the population, maybe if you live farther away from the power generation plant, you're not going to get anything really. And in many cases, you might not even have the power to even light your home. So with this alternating current, this was a means of powering homes and powering cities, literally, to and more efficient than what we have with direct current with Thomas Edison. All right, so make sure you remember with Tesla, alternating current. That's what's his fame, alternating current or AC current. Also, he talked a lot about the electromagnetic energy. So what we can actually grab from the earth, the electromagnetic current. And this was a means of communication and sending energy by utilizing the Earth's electromagnetic field. So when you think about a cell phone, right? Obviously, there's no lines connecting your phone to someone else's. So this is sent by microwaves, by the frequencies, by the amplitudes that is sent through these microwaves from one phone to the other. And in many cases, he actually could stand by with one of his Tesla, they call it like a Tesla tower. And he actually held light bulbs and it lit up literally in his hands without anything connected to it. Okay, it really couldn't power many things. Obviously, you can't just harness this electrical magnetic energy because it could really harm people. But with small frequencies, small amplitudes like microwaves, it wouldn't really cause harm to people.
Yeah.
So, like I said, when it comes to cell phones, right? The cell phones, you can communicate without having the actual line connected to it. He's utilizing the energy, the frequencies, the amplitudes of microwaves to communicate back and forth. Pretty ahead, he was really ahead of his time. All right, Edison's with Edison, obviously with the light bulb, that's something important, especially for this industrial age. Before, right, these factories had to shut down when it became dark, right, when the sun went down. And it was one of those things where it stopped production. Now with the light bulb, you can keep the factories open at night, right? And when it came to households, right, you're just sitting by a candlelight. Oh, great, that's wonderful. But in any case, with the light bulb, this allowed for production to occur even at night, even during the dark. And like I said, with his direct current, this was a rival to Tesla's. It wasn't near as efficient or effective, but with Edison and Tesla, they had a bitter rivalry, and to a point where it caused a lot of tension between the two. What's up, Connor?
Kind of like a bunch of theories that Edison didn't really discover half the stuff he discovered.
Yes, it's like he stole a lot of this technology and kind of patented it himself to become even richer, more well known. And in many cases, he's known as one of the robber barons of technology, right? So a robber baron, you'll hear a lot about that when you get to American history too, and how many of these wealthy business owners controlled a lot of the means of wealth and production. And with Edison, he kind of did the same thing with obviously electricity. All right, last thing I wanted to mention here with Eli Whitney, the first wave of the Industrial Revolution. Okay, I didn't get to it yesterday, but the biggest form of production for him was the cotton gin, and how this revolutionized the way textiles were created, the supply of textiles, and how Great Britain was reliant on the resource of cotton, right? Cotton. So with that, okay, one of the negative impacts, like I mentioned already, is that slavery is going to be pretty really demanded at the time, especially in the South, right? So with slavery and the United States here in the North and the South, the Civil War is going to be sparked over this system, right? This institution, in other words. And with the cotton gin, right, this only demanded more for the Southern states when it came to cotton and when it came to slavery. So like I mentioned, with interchangeable parts, okay, like I mentioned before, with this first wave of the Industrial Revolution, once something broke with your mechanism, once something broke with this innovation or invention, you had to throw it out. Let's say like a musket, for instance. But with these interchangeable parts, let's say if something goes bad within the musket, you can just interchange that part that's broken and you can continue on. It's not like you have to buy a new product. And with that, that allows more companies to build and manufacture these parts, offering more jobs, building more capital, raising the standard of living. Does that make sense? Okay. So it's not just the muskets, it's to all different types of industries. All right, so since I'm running out of time here, I just want to introduce the second wave. Like I mentioned before, with the vocab, where did the second wave of the Industrial Revolution occur? Where to start? Where to start? Go ahead, Paul. Germany, yep, good job. So with Germany, okay, so this second wave occurred in Germany. So this is shortly after they unify, and even before a little bit. One of the biggest reasons why Otto von Bismarck, we'll talk about him, he's the chancellor of Germany at the time, and he's the leader of Prussia, that's military power. He realized that if we don't unify, which Germany was separated amongst a bunch of German-speaking states, literally 30 to 40 of them, it was crazy. He thought if we don't come together, we're going to fall behind. We have so much innovation here, so much power we could access, and rise to that world level as a power and rival Great Britain and even the United States at the time if we just unify. So we'll talk about this German unification here soon. But once they do, well, innovation's inspired. Okay, there's many inventions that occurred. And like I mentioned, the second wave, that was created out of Germany. So this is a rapid creation of steel, chemicals, right? And petroleum used for these new combustion style engines. So literally an explosion within inside the engine, powering many different mechanisms. eventually like tanks, right, like cars. Even still today, we're heavily reliant on these combustion style engines. They're trying to shift a little bit more to electric cars, but in any case, these combustion engines are still in use today. Source of fuel, oil, natural gas, right, petroleum. And with Germany, okay, they're gonna really rise to a level of power leading up to World War I. A lot of it because of this high production, a lot of it because of these new innovations. And especially when it comes to, let's say, the radio, right? When it comes to the use of electricity, when it comes to communication, right? It's important to have, especially on the battlefield. All right, so we'll talk about more of these innovators more on Monday. Sorry we didn't get to it. It just takes a little bit of time. But you're introduced to them through the academy. See you guys later. Have a good one. Take care.